Hi, my name is Anirudh Mittal. I'm a third year chemical undergraduate. I'm presently the Institute Electronics and Robotics Secretary, and I'm contesting for the post of General Secretary Technical Affairs. I envision a culture in which students of IIT Bombay get excited and start working on problems that they observe in the campus and outside, and where they have easy access to resources, opportunities, and mentorship. In my freshman year, I participated in almost all the technical activities, which further motivated me to take the position of convener of the Electronics and Robotics Club, and then an institute secretary. I was also able to secure a bronze medal in this year's Inter-IIT meet. Leveraging all these experiences and the inputs I got from my groundwork, I propose to take initiatives that will bring about a required change in the tech culture and solve relevant problems. Starting with the umbrella body of the Tech Council, which is the Tinkerers Lab, I plan to promote the digitalization of TL, which is solving problems that people who regularly use TL and people who, whenever they visit the lab, often face. And I plan to do it by working on the entry system, issuing system, and the inventory management system. Then to solve the UG-PG gap, because of which we are not really able to leverage the PG experience that we can in our mentorship and the projects, and not able to cater to them, I plan to have a PG Tech orientation and a PG Tech weekend to have something exclusive for them, so that we can let them know about the functioning of the ITC and the resources we have in the Tinkerers Lab, and we can reach to the community. To prepare for the Inter-IIT Tech Meet, I plan to have a pseudo Inter-IIT team with the aim of retention of last year's participants and to prepare and structure the tech schools on recurrent themes so that we are able to train the beginners from the starting, and when during the time of hiring we have people to go to directly. I plan to add features to the Insti app and envision more projects like these that can be used by the student community. And the projects that have the potential to change the way students of IIT Bombay live their life, the way they choose their courses, the way they pay at canteens, the way they decide what they want to do. In sync with the HA and the CAT Council for smooth implementation. To promote the use and the conditions of the tech room, I plan to introduce evaluation and incentivizing schemes clubbed with the documentation GC. I also plan to propose Institute Technical Mentorship Program to make sure that no freshies, so that people have contacts always, and no freshie student does not participate in any tech activities because of any preconceived notion. Thank you.
There is a slight factual correction. He secured a bronze medal in the case study competition in the Inter-IIT Tech Meet, not the overall meet. So we can start with the manifesto debate. Over to the panel.
Yeah, so coming to the first question regarding the manifesto, is the mic working? So regarding the manifesto, the first question which I would like to ask you is that it's regarding the tier. So you mentioned in the manifesto that you plan to put a new thinking corner in place, and I believe that your motivation behind that is to make TL more student friendly in the phase 2 part of tier. My question is that what is the running cost of this initiative, and were the alumni who are going to actually contribute to this effort financially, were they consulted before this move was thought about? And the other part is that currently...
Let him answer the first part. Let him answer the first.
Sure.
Okay, so the first part is you want to know the cost structure of the whole thing, right?
Yes.
So basically, the thing with the whole plan right now is that it does not really involve a lot of cost. So starting with what you're planning with the thinking corner is inside the Tinkerers Lab, there's supposed to be a corner which will be made in a way which will not really involve a lot of infrastructure addition, which will just involve major changes to just make give a dedicated corner to particular things. So the things I've mentioned there, which is like, let's say, beanbags and whiteboards, these things won't cost more than 10,000 even if you have a lot of them. So that is like the maximum cap we will have on the cost.
So you mentioned the major changes. So now for a thinking corner, you need to move the existing equipment and machinery.
Right, so basically that will be just moved to a different place, but we won't need a different equipment for that. So that won't involve any cost. We will have to just move one part of the one equipment from one place to the second place.
Okay.
And the second part, which is the alumni part, this idea in fact was suggested by the alumni themselves. The Tinkerers Lab, when it was made in the main building during the first phase, which was in 2014, they had a thinking corner. and after which they suggested that we should have it in this Tinker's lab also, because that time it used to serve a very good purpose, and it used to resemble the original idea why Tinker's lab was made. So that is why they were the people who suggested that we should have something like this.
Okay, and is there approval there in this matter regarding about the cost structure and everything? Have you shown them the cost structure, the whole plan for action for this thing? And are they fine with this?
So the cost structure I just mentioned in the first part.
Yes, have you shown the cost structure to them also?
So I have talked about the purchase of the things I mentioned in the first part to the faculty who will approve it. And I guess since the alumni suggested having this idea and the things we should have in this corner, I don't think so it should be a problem, because if they are suggesting, they already know about the cost. And the approval on all the matter will go to the faculty who is ready for that.
Okay, now my second part comes to the question is that, you mentioned that you will need blackboards, you will need beanbags, you will need some markers and some other stationery stuff for this thinking on, right? And some coffee machine also I have mentioned. Now the question is that the current TL which is there, like the phase 1 TL, which is the AC room inside, and the external TL. This TL is, I mean, you mentioned that you want to make the TL more hospitable or student friendly rather. But the current TL, do you think that that is student friendly and hospitable currently? Because, when I go to TL, I don't find nuts and bolts there, I don't find multimeters there, I don't find anything in place over there. I find that the tiles, the wooden flooring that is in the inside TL, that is totally broken on some parts, and the mud is coming out of that. The ACs are not working. There's basic issues such that lights are not working, and the general condition of TL is very, not so great. So, if you are not able to maintain the TL currently in its existing position, how do you propose to add new things to it, and you ensure that they are maintained as well as the old TL is maintained? I mean, why not rather, first focus on maintaining the previous TL, the old TL, and making sure that people have better access to it, and it's more student friendly rather than adding more things to it. So how do you propose to do that, work in that part?
Okay, so starting with your first problem, which you said that people are usually not able to find things. So, and in general, the thing with this point is that it is not like we are not really focusing on the problems that that a user has in TL right now. The other initiatives, which is the digitalization initiatives, cater to all the problems like that. The reason why you are not able to find something there can be multiple reasons for that. Starting with someone has taken it out and the inventory has not been updated. Second reason is there is no online portal which can tell you that if a particular thing is available or not. So the other three initiatives that you see in the digitalization part cater to that. So it is not really like we are not focusing on the maintenance of the present structure. Next, with the flooring part you said, so the thing with Tinker's Lab is that this in this NSEMS phase, the inner phase is going under a renovation in which the flooring is going to be whatever pain is there in right now in the flooring part, that is going to be corrected. And that, right, so is that.
So do you mean to say when I go to TL and let's say I'm using some electronic circuit, I'm working on some electronic circuits, so do I log, let's say every resistor, every jumper I take out while I'm using it, or how do you plan to track minute things like these?
So things like resistors, jumpers, which we consider in consumables, we do not track them. What we expect from the authorities or the administration and the team is they refill it from time to time. They do not expect to track them, and there is no particular.
How do you track its misuse, or let's say there are people who come there and just take it away for their own projects? How do you track that?
That is okay. In TL, we are okay with people using jumpers, and we are okay with people using jumpers taking it away in their projects. That is okay.
So you are saying it is okay that there are some. So are not just jumpers. So let's say you are also stocking, let's say, some microprocessors.
This is the last rebuttal.
Yeah. So do you mean to say it's okay for students to walk in, take away consumables like this and not log anywhere that they have taken these from TL?
Consumables like what? Like jumpers, we are okay with that because that depends on the cost. Microprocessors we are not okay, and that is why I have the other initiatives which includes the entry system and the inventory management.
No, but inventory management in microprocessors, how will you measure? How will you track them? They are so small.
Yes, you're out of time.
Yes, I mean that's what the addition to the question. Should I answer?
Okay, so if you see the microprocessor, that is why I have the inventory management part. in which the microprocessor is big enough that we can track it. We can have tags on it because that is big enough. The tags I have looked about are small enough that can be put up on the microprocessors, and that can be easily updated in the inventory management, in the inventory.
Let's move on to the next question.
So the next question I have is on the technovation in the technical project section, and there are two subparts to this question. So I will start with the first one. So I want to know that so you plan to give second year students and above the opportunity on working on these projects, and how do you plan to restructure technovation this year? As in, what do you plan to do different so as to improve the outcome than what was tried this year? And you also mentioned that you plan to involve eCell in this initiative. So how do you exactly plan to get eCell involved, and what will be the role of the technical council particularly in looking after this initiative?
Okay, so the way I am planning to change the whole structure is first by focusing on the timeline. Right now the timeline of the whole project was from April to let's say it's currently going on. So that was when it started. When I'm planning to start it is from, let's say, October, with the actual working starting from January. The second thing is, right now it was open to everyone. The problem with the current timeline was it was starting in April, which was too late for sophomores to start something because most of the students already had their commitments. So for them it was very difficult to start something from April. That is why this timeline is proposed. And then again the eCell part. The reason why I want to collaborate with eCell on this is because I feel if we are working on something related to entrepreneurship, we have to consider the business aspect of it. And eCell has a lot of contacts, lot of mentorship, and lot of resources that we can leverage if we collaborate with them. And if we just do it independently, we might not be able to focus on the business part, which might hamper the whole reason why we are focusing on the entrepreneurship.
So, do you want to focus on projects which can be turned into viable business products, or are you open to projects which involve tinkering as well?
Can you explain the tinkering part? What do you exactly mean?
So, as in, I want to do a project just for the sake of doing it, and not with the perspective of maybe I want to build a company out of it. So, are you saying technovation is not for such projects in which I am allowed to tinker whatever I want?
For projects like in which a person just want to tinker something, we are always open for projects like these. There's a scheme in which you can come, you can show I'm working on this project, you can show the bills you have used, you can show the documentation, and you will get reimbursed for that also. This is specifically for entrepreneurship, in which we will consider business aspect. So let's say you have brought up a project in which there is no business potential, then we wouldn't prefer a project like this in this particular scheme. Otherwise, you can definitely bring a project, and we will be very happy to work on that.
So a following question to this. A lot of sophomores are involved in tech teams, due to which they already have their hands full in summer. As teams have their rigorous testing phase at that time, some others also go for interns. How does your program prove to be a viable alternative to work done in tech teams or during the interns? And how do you plan to specifically target them?
So the thing is, let's say we're starting from October. The reason. So basically this idea came from a lot of sophomores, because at that particular time, which is let's say October or summers, a lot of sophomores do not really have a plan. And the numbers you have mentioned, right now let's say we are aiming for 5 projects. And each team we can typically say has, let's say, 5 to 10 members. So what we're aiming for are like 25 to 50 people in a batch of around 1100 students. In the tech teams, let's say 70 to 80 sophomores are there. There's a very, very big chunk of students that can still participate in a competition like this.
So, is it a competition?
No, sorry, in a scheme like this. It will have a competitive nature, because let's say something like ITSP, because a lot of people will submit, we will filter out. So it will definitely have a competitive feature. Yes. Okay.
So currently, can you elaborate more on this competitive nature, because I think that has not been highlighted before.
Right. So basically, let's say 10 people submit their abstracts in the first phase, and we go through it, we give it to the mentors, they review it, and if we feel that only 7 to 8 projects are good enough to be carried forward, then only those projects will be carried forward. Then again, we will have a filtering, let's say in April. So that is how I feel it will be competitive. Nothing else.
So my question in this is that, when you say you're going to collaborate with eCell, do you plan to put these teams in competition with the other teams who are there in the eSummit itself, or do you plan to make some other path by eCell for these particular teams?
Right. So in ECEL right now there is no particular timeline of projects that will overlap with this. ECEL for startups has Eureka and a few other competitions, but their timeline is kind of completely opposite to this, and that is why they are. That is one of the reasons why they are for this idea. So this will not be a part of the e-summit because e-summit happens, let's say, at the end of January, and according to my timeline, the actual working will begin from January. So this will not be a part of e-summit. If a team individually wants to, independently wants to participate in the e-summit, they're obviously free to participate.
Okay. So you plan to basically
Last
create a
letter.
new portal, create a new path,
Right.
and take forward the teams in this path essentially.
Right. With the purpose of having startups from the Tinker's Lab from IIT Bombay, which is something that used to happen. We were very proud of a few years back, but that is something which is declining right now. So that is the overall purpose of this whole entire scheme.
Can you move on to the next question, please?
So I have a question regarding your miscellaneous section in the manifesto. It's regarding the tech vouchers. So tech vouchers were introduced by the last council, and it was there to promote a sustainable way to do tech in the institute. Now you mentioned that your motive is to promote purchasing of tech equipments as prizes for competitions. So my question is that if tech vouchers are introduced, what will the methodology of their working in terms of their amount, deciding the amount and number of vouchers, the form in which the vouchers will be presented, the validity and reimbursement mechanism, and additionally this dead money which we are giving out to the people, how will that be incorporated in the budget?
Right. So basically, whenever we roll this out, we will have to make a proper guidelines and documentation about what are the restrictions on any kind of voucher. Starting with things like what is the validity of this thing, which is let's say the dead amount you mentioned. So we'll have to keep a validity according to that, so that we can accommodate for it in the coming budget. And then the next part is allowed purchases. What kind of things are we allowing to buy? So all of this will have to be mentioned in the documentation. And then again comes the part of what kind of bills or what kind of things are we allowing in the whole scheme. So that will all come in the guidelines that will have to be made when this is rolled out.
But exactly, that's what I'm asking, the exact details. Like, have you figured out, suppose for example you give out 1,000 rupees vouchers, okay, for every team. And suppose there are 3 teams which are giving out, right? And suppose there are 4 events happening per club in a year. There are around 9 clubs currently, right?
Okay.
So this amounts to 1,08,000, around 1,10,000 rupees.
That is not really an amount we usually give prizes for. So
you see, okay, let's say 80,000 to 1 lakh for a year.
30,000, 40,000, let's say, to have a more realistic
Let's
number.
say 30, 40,000
Okay.
in a year for
Right.
all the clubs combined.
Right.
If you say that you're gonna, suppose the validity is 4 years, so it's like around again 1,20,000, 1,30,000, which is the dead money, which will be in the budget.
So that is what we will consider when we are making the whole scheme, right? So if that is an obvious problem, so that is why the validity won't be for 4 years. That is why we will have particular restrictions on things you can buy. You can the date before which you have to buy, or let's say whenever your voucher will expire.
So the plan is not in place right now.
So documentation is not in place because that will have to be figured out according to the faculty advisor, according to the things we are planning to allow in the whole scheme.
So you have not consulted them on this idea
No,
during your
definitely.
groundwork.
This is one of the ideas that the faculty advisor of the council suggested by himself, because he said that the prices that we give right now are not very reciprocative of things we do. So if you have something like this can easily promote purchasing of equipment, which is what I have mentioned right now. That is the purpose. So let's say for a competition like Accelerate, they have prizes like worth 20,000. We give vouchers worth 20,000 for that. There's a very good chance people who have got these vouchers will buy Arduinos in the next
That's
LF
exactly
competition.
what I'm talking about. For a single competition, you're giving vouchers worth 20,000.
So these are the we have like 2 or 3 major competitions, and the total amount deposited won't exceed more than 50,000 for the whole entire year.
For the club, right? For a single club.
No. For ERC, let's say we have only 1 event. For RC plane, we have again some amount.
Again 20,000.
Okay.
And then for 9 clubs also 20,000, 20,000,
No,
20,000 exactly.
but there aren't any events in which we give such an amount of money for any of the competitions.
Still, it's not 30 to 40,000, right? It's much more than that. It's much more than that.
Okay.
You also have line follower coming in as well.
Right,
You
but-
also another
But we do not really give prizes for line followers.
So why not? As in, why not also incentivize ITSPs as well? ITSPs work for 2 months on a
Exactly.
project. So why
For
not?
ITSPs, they already get the reimbursement, so there is not really a point.
So, but Okay.
I think we're deviating from the intended question. Let us please get back to the question.
I mean, the motivation behind giving tech vouchers is to promote sustainable tech, right?
So if the question is why we do not give prizes for line follow or any other
No,
competition.
that is not the question. The question is,
Well, so you haven't answered the complete question yet. I asked you about the amount and number of vouchers, the form in which the vouchers will be presented. This is not even answered yet.
The form in which it will be presented.
Exactly.
Okay. So I mean that is something we can that is something we can easily figure out. I mean, let's say we have a paper document that we are giving people with some authority approval. So that should be fine with it.
Don't you think that Photoshop will be an easy
Like a paper
method of
document?
Exactly.
No, but that will require a physical approval, which is something that will always happen in a bill or let's say any other reimbursement procedure.
I mean, I can easily Photoshop a document and make
But
it
that is true with any of the ITSP reimbursement procedure also. We physically check whenever we take any bill. So even if you Photoshop, we can easily check if that's correct or not.
And you said that there will be a list of allowed purchases.
Right.
But how do you enforce that? Like if once I have the voucher, I can spend it anywhere, right?
No, right. We give you whenever we give you the voucher, we will give you the guidelines also.
Right. But how do you enforce those? How do you make sure someone didn't buy something else?
So the process is, let's say if I've given you a voucher of some X amount and I've given you the guidelines. Whenever you want to redeem that, you will bring me that bill and we will reimburse that. And if that bill does not follow the guidelines, that will not be reimbursed. So that is, I guess, it will be enforced directly.
we are out of time for this question. Can we move on to the next question, please?
So again, the following questions are again on projects. So one important thing which I want to understand is that there is a mention of introducing industry projects, and you mean to say there could be in the winter break, maybe when there is a time for 1 or 2 months to work on some projects, you plan to float some projects from industries or maybe some alumni is helping you out with that. But what can you actually achieve on an industry problem statement which just came out from industry in a month or two? And as in, this is something which has been tried a couple of years back, and the problem with it is that how do you plan to match the expectations which the industry will have from the projects being floated? And if the students leave the project in between, isn't it a loss for both the industry and the council in between as well?
Okay, so starting with what we can achieve in a project like which spans for let's say a month or two. So I think whenever we're setting up the documentation and initial proposal of the problem statement, we can easily define the way it is defined can be made in a way that it can be achieved in a month or two. And again, so it is starting in the month of winter. It does not really mean that it has to end in the month of winter. They can easily figure out the logistics. They can mutually make a plan whenever they want to end it. The industry can, the fact that you have mentioned, the industries are also aware about the fact. So they will raise a problem statement in a way that it can be achieved in a feasible time span. The second point about the previous attempt was, so basically it was attempted 2 years back, which was in 2018 actually. So, and the reason it could not be, we could not roll this out was that year we were hosting the inter-IT, which happens in winters. So that's why we did not have the bandwidth to.
No, factual correction, that is not true.
Which part?
We did not have inter-IT the same year we hosted the industry projects.
So basically, in the GSM particularly mentioning about the one that hosted the inter-IT, this was mentioned in. It was his resume point that was mentioned this time, and it was his response that this was particularly the reason. And even the year before that, this has been attempted and it had been worked out. In the year 2016, this was attempted and it was worked out, this particular project.
Follow.
And the third part about the industry expectation. Again, the same part. If the industry is laying out the problem statement and we can inform them that these are the students, these are second year students, third year students, or fourth year students, whoever is working on them, they can accordingly lay out the problem statement and they can accordingly decide what they want to achieve in the whole time span. So if they have laid out everything in before, whenever they are hiring students, whenever they're taking students, they know the caliber of the students. So they can accordingly, they have a particular expectation which will be set by themselves.
Okay, again, I'll like to reiterate, we hosted inter-IT last year,
Right.
and these projects, which I think these people are talking about, happened the year before, so they were not the same year.
So basically the 2 years I'm mentioning, the last year it was also in the manifesto point and the GS, the response of the GS is that we simply did not have the bandwidth for having projects like these at that time. The year before that, in 2016, this was attempted, and in fact that GS is one of the GSs who is presently working on a startup, and he suggested that they will be available if something like this rolls out.
So you mentioned that some attempts with these projects were successful in 2016.
Right.
Can you just briefly tell us what those projects?
The problem statements.
Yeah. What
I'm not really aware about the problem statements.
And secondly, as in, what is the philosophy of involvement in the projects? Does ITC plan to micromanage the projects or just connect interested students with available opportunities? Several students start projects and abandon midway. Why does ITC plan to become a middleman in ensuring accountability from students? Doesn't this tarnish the reputation of the ITC?
So basically, the structure will be something to what SARC has in their ILP, in which they connect the students, they take regular follow-ups, let's say weekly or after every 15 days, or let's say after a month, depending on the actual span of the project. And that's how they will, that's how they are ensuring the industry that these students are working. So basically, it's kind of a way we are connecting the students. We are not taking the responsibility. We are telling them these students are working on it. They are hiring the students. The industry is hiring it, and they are taking responsibility for the project. We are not taking responsibility that this project will be completed by this particular.
So what different are you doing from ILP?
So the thing with ILP right now is that if you see a list of 40 projects that they host, 30 or 35 of them, let's a very big chunk of them, are machine learning, programming projects. What I'm trying to achieve here are the rest of the tech, which is hardware projects that involve other kind of disciplines, which is something that is not presently available. And that is something because they have a direct pool of alumni and not particular sources that can give them these kind of projects. We, on the other hand, being the Tech Council, have contacts with people who are working on something like this, and we can easily leverage, we can easily bring them on board.
If there are no rebuttals, we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, so the next question is about the PG tech section in your manifesto, specifically about the tech orientation part that you have mentioned. So there's already a tech orientation that happens, which is combined for the UGs and the PGs. And there's a separate tech orientation which happens in the month of January, which for the new PhD students. So you mentioned that you plan to conduct an orientation. So what new have you planned? Yeah.
So basically the structure of this orientation will be similar to the UG orientation, which will make sure that as a council we don't have to put a lot of extra efforts in putting it up, which is the way it works in all the other councils also. The reason I want to have a separate tech orientation is that right now the orientation we have invites both the UGs and the PGs. And the basic problem the PGs feel that the reason they do not show up to the event is that the way our events are structured, the way it is exactly are the things they can participate in and the resources of the thinkers that they can directly participate in.
So why not try for a bigger venue than this? As in, why do you want to demark them separate as PG students and UG students? And why do you want to have, say, brand? You mentioned that there are some events which are branded like UG events. As in, can you please explain what does this mean? And if, as in, why do you want to demarcate them as separate?
So the reason to have something exclusive, which is demarketing it, is telling them that, so basically, is giving them a signal that we have events specifically for PGs, or there are things that we do for PGs. Right now, whichever events we have, especially starting with August, let's say we have Accelerate, we give them a note, information about Accelerate. A lot of them don't show up for events like these because they feel, because there's a very good chance that in their previous college they have done similar events. That is why they do not show up, and which is what followed in the coming months. So that is the perception they built in the starting months. The reason I want to have it exclusive is so that we can directly tell them the events they have. We won't directly mention Accelerate in that. We will focus on the things that we have specifically for PGs, like CDS, SRG. We can mention that so that from the starting of the year we can tell them that this is a particular event in which you can be a part of.
Okay, so considering that you have planned new events for PGs, you have mentioned that there's a tech weekend, and you have planned several 6-hour long hackathons for PGs. So can you, and you have also mentioned that there are lots of fun events for PGs. So can you comment on what exactly are these fun events? Also, considering that PGs and PhD students have a lot of other commitments, can you comment on the availability and interest of these students in these several hour-long hackathons? And if this has been tried yet by the council before. Also, is there any need for separate PG hackathons, considering that this will put extra burden on the clubs? And what new do you bring to these events if there are already several workshops and hackathons organized by other councils?
Okay, so I guess the first part was to mention some examples of the fun events I have. So if I have to quote some examples, we can have a separate small scale tech treasure hunt, which we have a uniform event at the end of a tenure. We can have a separate small scale event for them. We can have drone flying events, which is something the Aero Modeling Club have had this year. So these are the fun events I mentioned. Next is the part of having it exclusive. So this again, the answer for that will be again the same I had for the PG Tech orientation, which is the reason to have anything exclusive for them is to just to let them know that these are the events we have for them. We have something exclusive. If they are going in the orientation, we are telling them these are the events we have, and then we do not have anything exclusive for them. Then it beats the whole, it beats the point of having everything in the first place. And the third part was to have the extra burden part. We already have a PG nominee who is responsible for taking care of events like these. So if that person structures the whole thing and thinks about the events and the lab visits, which can easily happen, it won't be a burden on the council.
Has this been tried before? You didn't answer that. Also, considering there's a PG nominee, but the actual on-ground work will be done by the clubs at the end of the day.
Last rebuttal.
So that was not exactly a rebuttal. It was an unanswered
We are
question.
we are out of time. So please answer this and we'll do.
Right. So basically, the PG Tech weekend has been proposed before, but again, the main issues that are involved with the reason why it is not really, we are not really able to implement it includes that the PG nominee himself is not able to cater to everything, for which I have the fourth initiative, which is to involve more people in the PG council. Then the issue of the timeline we have, right, the timeline, it was proposed before. In that particular timeline, they felt that it was not feasible to have that event because the PGs would turn up. The thing with the PG cycle is that their fourth semester is the semester they can participate easily. The rest of the semesters are pretty hectic. So the fourth semester is something that we should target this. And the clubs, you said the on-ground work will be with the clubs, which I think should be fair, because if they have events planned, if they have planned the lab visits before, it won't be a lot of extra work for them to have it. And again, I mentioned with the PG nominees, there will be other people in the council to help him with the whole structuring.
We are out of time for this question. Can we please move on to the next?
Can I just add a point before we move on? I mean, it just regarding the questions, the way he's answering, that's all.
So this is regarding the Institute Developers Community. You mentioned projects like canteen remote payment, but projects like canteen remote payment are very difficult to develop and even more difficult to deploy because this involves a lot of outside factors like talking to the hostel council, talking to the mess vendors and educating them how to use this. So how will you take care of that? And if you're setting up an online payment, there's a lot of security issues. Have you thought about those and how you tackle them? And you mentioned a vacancy counter. What's a vacancy counter?
Okay, starting with the canteen remote payment, the external factors that you have mentioned. So this is one of the projects that we tried to work on this year also. So because of that, I know that we already did talk to the HA Council and they were for the idea. They did not find any particular issues with that. So I guess that should not be a problem with the implementation. The next was the mess vendors. We also did talk to two particular canteen vendors, and we did explain them what value we are adding to them, and whenever we made the entire plan, we specifically made it in a way so that we were adding value to their present system, and that is why they were also for the idea. The next part was related to security issues. So for that, we talked to multiple people, starting with the IB web guys who have particular portals. We talked to the sports people who have their own payment portal. So things like that also involve payment procedures, and they have been able to implement it. So we, being the tech council, it should not be a problem in the implementation. It might take a little long, but it won't be a problem in the final implementation.
You didn't answer what's a vacancy counter.
Oh, sorry.
And
Okay.
one more question. So the payment, are you planning to develop a payment setup on your own, or are you going to outsource it to something like InstaMojo or some others?
Exactly that, because so that is a very secure medium, and the deal with that is they charge a very small tax, which is let's say 1% or 2%, which won't be a lot when you consider the value it is adding. And again, about the vacancy counter. So basically, a vacancy counter is something that will tell you how many people are present in a particular room. So let's say if you want to go to the badminton court or the squash court, how many people are playing there at that point of time, and things like that. And this is something the sports council is very eager to get it implemented.
So I think something like this was developed for the squash court but never deployed.
So I did talk to one of the people you just mentioned who was responsible for handling that. And so basically his point was every year this is something they try for, but the reason is they just try it for them by themselves. They never have the technical expertise or never associate with the technical council. This was one of the projects that was floated as ITSP sports collaboration. But again, that time there weren't enough people picking this project and experienced people working on this.
Okay. And you also mentioned a lot of projects which would need a database like the TL entry system, the vendor database, and you also mentioned that you'll a lot of website building for ITSP reimbursement portal and websites for new tech teams. How will these projects be implemented given the crunch of time and the lack of manpower we have in DevCom right now? Because they have other and more interesting projects which they can work on. So how do you motivate people to build these projects and moreover maintain these projects? Because once a database or website is made, there's a lot of work which goes into maintaining it so that it doesn't go wrong.
Right, so basically the projects I've mentioned like ITSP reimbursement, I'm not really expecting DevCom to work on projects like these. I'm planning to have a web nominee, which is something we used to have, let's say 2 years back, and that guy will be responsible for mentioning, for taking care of things like these. For TL particularly, I have different plans, and the web nominee wouldn't take care of that. So for Tinker's Lab particularly, what I have planned is, Tinker's Lab has this thing called TLDIO projects, in which they float projects that can be implemented in the Tinker's Lab. So in one of the projects, this is something that will be floated. Like one of the projects will be related to the software part. And this is for particularly TL. Any other ITC related projects, the web nominee will handle.
So you said the web nominee you had was 2 years back, right?
Yes.
So there was a reason why the web nominee post was scrapped. So why
Right.
do you think this will work now? Because it'll be the same job for him even now, just under a different name called DevCom.
Right.
So how is it better for the guy?
So basically, you are saying that I will have difficulty in finding a guy for the position. Right?
And
That
all
is why-
IPs and all councils in general face that.
So for that, that is the reason why I've talked to multiple people who are involved with WNCC, and I've told them about the basic job descriptions, and the response I've got for the position is very good. So there is a very good chance that we will have a web nominee for the next tenure. And again, the point is, if other councils have trouble in finding people, and them being not the tech council, and they still are able to find it, even if they have to push for it, even let's say even if you have to fight, we will finally get a web nominee. And for a backup, I have talked to multiple people.
So you mentioned that you will outsource some of this project work for TL through TL DIY projects. But most of these projects are just a weekend-long projects or maybe a month-long projects. And how do you, and the people who will be doing those projects are probably doing some code building project for the first time. So how do you expect them to come up with a very good portal for whatever requirements you have? And how will you ensure that whatever they make will be well documented and something which can be maintained later? I'm not able to understand how safe it is to rely on some first time students who are trying something out for the first time to make something which is to be used by the entire TL.
So
This is the last question.
the present scheme of TL DIY projects is made in a way that whichever factors you have mentioned, which includes the documentation and enforcing that the project is deployed in the Tinker's Lab, is already ensured. So one of the projects that they have worked on that can be deployed in the Tinker's lab were made by 2 people in a span of a month, which was the span of the actual project. And they made a basic prototype. And once it was done, once we did the feasibility check that it was working properly and it was under the conditions that you wanted it to be, there were more people who joined the team and scaled it up and made better products for that.
Okay, we need to move on to the next question, please.
So, what is your plan for the expansion of chemistry club? Will the formation of the managerial team only be enough? Like in the past also, many of the clubs have been added or the new clubs have been formed in recent 2 to 3 years. But still the participation of the club is limited to a certain amount of insti population. So as a GSTA, what are your plans for that?
So the present structure of the chemistry club is that it is run by enthusiasts, and there are like 7 people. And the best part about it is that most of them are 3rd year and 4th year students. And so let's say in a general club, mostly 2nd year and 3rd year students are the people who are running it. If a club can be run by people from 3rd year and 4th year who do not even have a position of responsibility, then I think that is a very good sign and we should take it forward. Then coming up with the managerial part, the reason why I want to have this thing is that right now the problem they are facing is with the publicity and the organizational stuff. Because everyone in the council is an enthusiast, whenever something related to organization come in, we need someone who is responsible for that, for taking care of that part. That is the reason why I want to have it. And about the structure of the events they planned for this semester, the previous semester and the next semester, the events they have are very, very interesting and not really just about the chemistry. Like one of the events they had was pop culture in chemistry, in which they showed particular scenes from movies in which chemistry was used. So these are the events that are very interesting, and if you take a general opinion, I feel a lot of people would be interested in coming to events like these.
Like as you said, the publicity part. So there was a publicity and design team past year. So do you think the performance was that good, and what is your plan to emphasize on the publicity part, because they are new club? Like as I said, there have been clubs which have been added to the ITC, but the publicity part is not that good.
Right.
So
basically,
what is your plan for that?
You want to know the feedback of this year's publicity team and the next year's plans,
Yeah,
right?
so what is your plan?
Right. So basically, if you see in the publicity section, starting with the 1-minute video series, which is something that will easily cater to the clubs and the teams and the, let's say, any other event which in, let's say, inter-IT. So that is how we can easily get to the people regarding the publicity part. And the reason they did not really have a lot of people showing up to their events was the basic basic maintenance of the Facebook page. Things like that were not done right now. So even if you work on them,
I think we are digressing. His question was, how do you plan to improve the publicity team, not how you plan to do publicity.
Right. Okay. Plan to improve the publicity team. So right now the structure is we have a publicity and a media manager, and so the way we can work on that is by having a training kind of thing for him in the initial 1 or 2 weeks, which is something that we had for our conveners who were working on the design part this year. So what we did was we connected them with people who are experienced in design. They work for them for particular projects, for some initial projects, and that is how they learn. And right now they are in a very good stage. So what we can do is with the manager, we can help him connect with some people who are experienced in that particular area. We can give him a proper description of things he has to capture, the way he can work on the publicity part.
So, do you mean to say that every club should have conveners who get trained, some of them get trained in designing posters, or
No.
do you wish to have a separate design team?
No, that will be there. I'm just mentioning the example that we had this year in my particular club. That is how we can work on the improvement of the team. We will have a separate design team.
If there are no rebuttals, we can move on to the next question.
So I have a next question regarding your opening statement in the manifesto itself, the first part. And you have mentioned in the starting point itself that you plan to, promote and promote projects having a strong impact on the student community, you mentioned. So my question is that as an institute technical council, we have the responsibility and to support any kind of project which happens in the institute. So irrespective of whether it has a strong impact on the community or not. So my question is that since it is the very spirit of the Tinkerers Lab and the Institute Council to promote any kind of projects, any kind of tinkering which happens, so will you promote only these strong projects which are strong in terms of the community, or do you plan to promote also these projects which are not so strong, have not so strong impact on the community, but has a strong impact on the learning of that individual person?
So there is no way we can leave out on projects that do not have an impact on the student community. Promoting one kind of projects do not mean that we will not focus on the other kinds of projects. Promoting one kind of projects that mean that we will have a particular scheme for working on projects like these. And the purpose for that is, let's say we have a project that has an impact on the student community, that the student community uses. They see their batchmates, their friends using a particular tech product that their batchmates have made, which is something which is Instab is the best example of. Then there's a very good chance that people will try to get involved in things like this. They will realize the value of tech, which is that is the reason why we are promoting this particular category of projects, which definitely do not mean that we will neglect projects which involve tinkering. We always have the Tinkerers Lab open. You can bring in any project. You can work on whatever you want. ITSP is the perfect platform. You can work on whatever project you want. We have no particular conditions on that.
Isn't ITSP just for the first year students?
Again, we have multiple projects for that. If you see the project section, we have different schemes for people who want to work on projects. Even if there is no scheme, if you want to work on a project, which I mentioned earlier, you can just come in, you can just pitch in your projects. If you have proper documentation, proper bills, you can get it reimbursed, you can work on the project. We have TLDY projects in which you can in fact float your ideas in that particular scheme. So we have multiple schemes in which you can come and work on any project you want to, irrespective of the impact we have. As the General Secretary, I would like to work on some particular projects that will have a student impact, that will impact on the student community.
The fundamental question remains the same. The fundamental question is that in our manifesto you have mentioned a lot about promoting strong projects, promoting projects which have ESL business aspect to it, promoting projects which are bigger in nature. Your manifesto doesn't encourage or
if you have two projects, one which has a lot of impact and the second one is not, there's a very good chance that people in the first project will complete it because they have a very good reason, very good incentive to complete it, which is something that is not available in the second part. Coming to the part where we encourage projects that just involve tinkering, we already have a lot of schemes. There's a very, very open and big scheme in which people can come and work on any project they like to. So I'm not really sure how else we should promote that. The reason why people leave any project, one of the biggest reason is that people, if there is no end goal or let's say no use case, if there's a very good use case, very strong incentive for people to complete the project, then again we have a better chance of getting the project completed, getting it showcased, getting people, motivating other people to tell that this is the particular project that was worked upon. Again, Instab is the best example for the case I'm mentioning.
Okay, we're out of time. Can we move on to the next question, please?
So I would like to ask you a question about the convener training program that you are suggesting. So like how do you plan to conduct the convener training program? Like will it include all the clubs? What would be the timeline for the convener training program? Like for example, for different clubs, for example like Kritika, Aero Club, Aero Modeling Club, the timeline for which this program can be conducted can be quite vast. Like it can't be conducted in autumn for Aero Club because of the weather conditions. Same goes for Kritika. So like how do you plan to do it? Like, do you have a structure for it? Do you have like who will take the session?
So right now, by convener training, I do not mean that there will be one particular convener training session for all the clubs. Each club will have its own convener training, which is something that is already in place. Aero Modeling Club and Web and Coding Club already have some kind of informal convener training sessions in which whenever the conveners are appointed, they have some kind of convener training. About the timeline, again, this is a fair point that the timeline for different clubs will be different, which is okay. The responsibility of the convener training will be on the manager of the club. Whenever they want to have the session, they can have it. For example, Aero Modeling Club usually has it right after the NCM starting in the month of April, and then somewhere around summers. For Kritika, it makes sense to have it in August. Even before that, they can have it. The people in the club have mentioned that they have some kind of things which include telescope handling and astrophotography, in which they can work on in the month of April. So that again depends on the managers of the club.
So why do you want to have these kind of sessions just for the conveners and not for the students of the institute in general? Because I feel there will be definitely students who will be interested in this, and this is something which will help you have some kind of community. Why do you want to restrict it just for conveners?
So this is something that will not be restricted for people. People in the groups that we have, the common groups we have, it will be publicized that we are having things like that. The thing is, it will be enforced for the conveners, which is that we will strongly suggest that you should complete it, because the thing is, they will have to take on events related to the similar to the things that we are teaching them.
So you mean to say that conveners, you will be enforcing this upon conveners, is what you say?
I said we will strongly encourage conveners to take part in activities, because all these activities are the things they will work on in the coming year. They will take events on this. They will participate in competitions related to the things that are being taught in the training sessions.
You are also saying that hostel, like you want to include hostel council secretary, like hostel council, tech council as well. So all of the hostel councils, even like they are not complete as you can see. But if they are complete as well, like hostel secretaries are made in late of August, that's middle of the semester. So if you want to include them as well, like won't it be like too hectic, too cumbersome to include the hostel secretaries in the convener training program as well?
Wouldn't that be too cumbersome for the Sekis?
You need to have two different timelines for that.
Okay, why?
Because ideally your training convener training program should be completed by the start of the semester, or let's say for the first week of semester.
Okay, again, so the timeline will depend on for every club. It will be different. For all the events that are happening after the August, we will have the Sekis in place, so that should not be a problem. For events that we have in April, we already have a database of people. Let's say we talk about a particular hostel, let's say hostel X. We already have a database of freshmen going to hostel X. At that time, the GSEC is already appointed. If we push it through the GSEC, hostel GSEC, and tell them to participate in this particular initiative, if we invite them through their GSEC, through their hostels, and if they have the tech course at that time, that would be again amazing. Then we have a very good chance that people will have the incentive to participate in that. And what the other incentive of involving hostel secretaries is that if someone has attended a particular event of a particular club, they can again replicate something similar in their hostels. And this is again an incentive for people to join the hostel councils.
Can you again specify the objective for this convener training program? If I'm understanding that it would be like spread over the semester of half of the semester. So what's the main objective for this convener training program?
So the main objective of having something like this is so that the people of the club, so this again revolves around the basic idea of community building. We want people of the club to know about things that they are associated with. We want them to participate in competitions for which they have to know some prerequisites they need to have. So that is broadly the purpose of this.
We are out of time. Last question.
So this is regarding the publicity and outreach section. You mentioned that you will leverage the IITB Bombay Reddit thread. So first of all, who will be responsible for running this thread? The thread currently has some moderators and a lot of random content. Second, so currently the institute culture is to go on Facebook or find Facebook groups to ask questions. How will you encourage people to shift to Reddit suddenly to ask technical questions? And have you asked the PR regarding this? Because this is IITB students commenting on the internet. Anyone can see this. So there could be some issues.
Right. So starting with who will manage this thread. Right now the moderators we have are from the Web Encoding Club, and I've talked to them. So what we are planning initially with this thread is to have problems related to programming. for that, we will have the moderators for the next year will be people from the Web and Coding Club who will manage the process of moderating, because we are focusing on the programming part. Once we shift to other kind of problems, we can involve other people as moderators also. The next, I'm sorry, can you repeat the middle question?
Your goal from this is for anyone in the institute to ask technical questions on Reddit, right? And I'm saying people right now go to Facebook. How do you change that?
So right now the thing with the objective of having this thing is, we do not have a dedicated Facebook group or something like that in which people can ask their questions. So let's say if I'm a programmer, I'm a new person, I'm learning something, there is no particular platform I can go to. If there's a very general question, there are already made portals in which I can go. But if there is something specific to the IIT Bombay channel, let's say related to ACE or something like that, there is no particular platform. And the thing is, there are a lot of people who use Reddit for similar purposes. Facebook groups do not really have purpose, do not really serve purposes like this anymore. So there's a very good chance that people will go to the thread whenever they have to. And it is not like we are expecting people to continuously follow threads like these. Whenever they want to, they can go to that particular portion. The third part was related to PRO. I haven't directly talked to the PRO people, but according to the conditions we had this year, we had to just give the credentials of the accounts we had, and we had to make sure that nothing inappropriate was posted from it. So if we have the moderators in place and we give them the required credentials, I don't think so this should be a problem.
So a few years back, there were lots of efforts made by different clubs to form Facebook groups, which address these technical doubts, and these were different for different clubs. But you can, so what's the status of them and how Reddit will solve these?
So the group you're referring to, I guess, is the Tech Senti Janta group.
And there were other clubs as well.
Okay, right. So basically, that is the inherent difference between Facebook and Reddit. One of the reasons people mentioned that group died over time was there was a lot of spam in that particular group. That is the reason why that is the inherent difference between Facebook and Reddit. The reason why we want to have there is basically the moderators can easily control the spam, and there is a very
factual correction. It was not due to the spam. It was due to new people not being added to the group.
Okay, basically that is where it revolves, I guess. If people are not really able to get their questions answered, that is something that will happen with the inherent nature of Facebook, and that is something that will not happen with Reddit, because that is the platform that is being used for doubts for in general question solving.
So aren't there Google groups of lot of clubs which are already in place, which can have better segregated discussions and people being added regularly to it? Isn't that solving the problem?
Again, there's a very basic inherent difference between all these social network sites. Reddit is a platform that is being currently used for doubts like this. It has a platform similar to Stack Overflow. That is the reason why it is it is in demand.
If the previous groups you said that were suffering from a lot of spam, isn't that the whole point of forming a community where you can ask anything that you want to? And if you are not allowing that, then how is a person free enough to tinker and ask stuff?
So whenever I say, so when I mean spam, I mean people who are not really associated with that group, people not from IIT Bombay, or in general if they're asking questions that are not really relevant to that group, or there are people who are not responding to that group. That is something that was happening there. It was a self-sustaining model in which people were answering questions on their own. With this particular structure, what we are trying to do is, if anyone is asking doubt, we have people in place who will answer that question. We have people who are moderating everything that is going on there. So again, the spam part will be reduced when we have a structure like this.
We are out of time. So that brings us to the end of the manifesto debate. We will now move on to the third part of the SOAPBOX, which is the topic debate. I'll read out the topics that we have. We'll start with, so we have just 2 topics, so there's no necessity of chick picking. We'll start with the first topic, Intra-IT Tech Meet. So Intra-IT Tech Meet is going through a transitional phase with the Intra-IT status of the meet recently being stripped away. What should the GSTA do in this regard? There are 4 questions. Without the Intra-IT status, is it worth putting in so much effort and funding towards organizing the meet? What would the purpose of this meet be and who would it cater to? Due to the scraping of the status of the meet, getting funds from the institute for the same is not a very sustainable model. What should the GSTA's plan of action be in this case? Note that the Institute Technical Council is a Gymkhana body. Boot camps were conducted during 2019-20. How many of those who attended the boot camps were actually selected in the final contingent? And the last question being, what are the shortcomings noted from this year's experience? Elaborate on how you wish to address these. Over to the candidate.
Okay, so starting with the first question, which is without the inter-IT status, is it worth putting in so much effort and funding? So I feel, yes, it is definitely worth putting in the efforts we are getting, because even if you don't have that status, everything else is still in the place. The basic purpose of the meet, which was to have a pan-IT interaction, which was to gauge different, the ideas and the level of different inter-ITs, was able to represent IT Bombay's tech culture in a particular competition. That was the basic purpose that still holds, even if you do not have the inter-IT status. The second part is, due to the scraping of the status of inter-IT meet, getting funds from the institute is not a very sustainable model. So the funds we need from the institute can be broken down into two major chunks, can be broken down into three chunks, two of which are very major. One of them is related to the travel part, the second one is related to the projects part. The projects part, it should not be a very tough problem, because we are anyway working on projects, and if you have a dedicated portion for projects beforehand, it should not be a problem. For travel part, it is still, it is again dicey. We'll have to talk to the administration to push it, to allow that part. And again, this will again depend on the negotiation between different IITs, how they are going to plan it for the next year. But this is a part that we will have to definitely work on. The next part is, boot camps were conducted during this year. How many of those who attended the boot camps were actually selected in the final contingent? So according to the contingent leaders, very few people who attended boot camps showed up for the contingent interviews and were part of the contingent. The basic reasons, the reason this was the case was that boot camps had a structure in which we introduced 5 to 6 different topics briefly, which is like we had 2 to 3 hour sessions for every topic, which is not sufficient for any candidate to get into the contingent, just to know about the topics. It had a very good purpose of introducing inter-IT to people, which is a publicity purpose. But so that is why I have an initiative of tech school, which is converting the boot camps into tech school. The way I will do it is the topics we had for the boot camps, basically the introduction of the topics. Instead of that, we will have in-depth coverage of these topics. So instead of expecting candidates to attend all the boot camps or let's say all the 6 boot camps, we are expecting them to pick 1 or 2 topics depending on their convenience, and they can attend that particular tech school. And after that, we first have a hiring ground. We know people who know some particular thing which will be used in inter-IT. Again, and then people who have attended the boot camp, even if they do not go to the tech camp, they have learned something in a very good way that they can use at a later point of time or in any other project. The last part is, what are the shortcomings noted in this year's experience? Elaborate on how you wish to address these. So starting with late formation of team. So this is something which is an inherent problem of tech, as unlike sports and cult, because we have problem statements changing every year. We get the problem statement somewhere around October mid, some kind of problem statements, 1/3 of the problem statements. So that is why I have an initiative of pseudo inter-IT team, which is having a team right from the starting of the semester, or let's say August or mid-sem, just before mid-sems. And these people, this team will comprise of people who participated last year. So this will also solve the purpose of increasing the retention, which is very important considering the present structure of the meet. Then it will have the contingent leaders and also a couple of seniors who are experienced in particular themes we have, the things we are having as tech schools. And this will also serve the purpose that these guys will also be responsible for structuring and planning the tech schools and responsible for conducting them. The next problem that happened was related to the publicity issues. There were a lot of people who could have easily participated in a lot of problem statements, but they were not aware about the requirements in that problem statements or the exact parts. So let's say if I'm giving you a problem statement, each problem statement can easily be broken down into multiple segments. And whenever I pitch it as a whole, it is very tough for people to grasp the whole context and able to understand if they can fit in that problem statement, which is something that happened with a lot of problem statements this year. So that is why what I'm planning to do is have short videos of every problem statement, let's say 1-minute videos, in which a person is just sitting and explaining these are the things that are required to solve that particular problem statement. These are the kind of roles we have in that particular problem statement. And this is the particular timeline. Basically, the brief details of that problem statement can be given in a short video format. One more reason we struggled this year was was related to funding. This year the proposal for funding was went a little late, which is something that can be pushed a little earlier next year.
You're out of time. The panel can now ask questions.
So you said that without the inter-IT, despite the event not having an inter-IT status, you are still interested in doing this. So that's fine, but what about the students who will be participating? Without the inter-IT status, this event will be as same as other competitions that are available, and other competitions have equal, if not better, incentives to participate. So what are your plans regarding that?
So I did a general survey of people who participated this year, and in general the opinion of people is that they did not really care about the inter-IT tag. In fact, a lot of people this year also thought that there was no inter-IT tag because the information was announced a few months before the meet. So a lot of people, this year it was continued, but actually a lot of people still thought that there was no tag. So there is a very good chance that we will have enough people, and let's say in the worst case that people do not show up for things like these, we again can try to push and highlight the incentives people can have, the part where they can easily get a very good exposure by going to a different IIT and representing IIT Bombay. That is something we can try to push and highlight and get more people on board.
So if it has no inter-IT status, then why put more, as a council, why put more efforts in just this one particular event and not focus on other national or maybe international competitions which are already going on? Why not make some provisions so that teams are formed for such competitions?
So again, with the pseudo inter-IT team we have, or in general the team we make for inter-IT, there is no limitation that that team cannot participate in any other competition. In fact, one of the problem statements of this year inter-IT is participating in the Smart India Hackathon, which is something that we can easily carry forward in the coming years. Teams that have formed the pseudo inter-IT team, it can participate in inter-IT and other competitions also.
So you mentioned that this pseudo inter-IT team will be made somewhere in August, right?
Right after the board meeting.
So what will this team be doing at that point of time?
After it is formed?
Yeah.
So starting with structuring of the tech schools, what all topics do they want to have in the tech school? What content do they want to be covered in that particular tech school? Who do they think should take the tech school? And they feel this is a very probable area of problem statement, then they can accordingly work on it. They can learn that particular area, or they can involve more people. They can identify people who might be interested in going for a meet like that.
So regarding you mentioned tech schools, right? So who will be taking these tech schools, and what will be the structure of these tech schools? And what are you planning to teach these pseudo inter-IT participants in these schools?
So basically, let's just start with what I'm planning to teach. This year we had 6 topics for the boot camps. So we will have topics similar to those. Basically, these are the topics that are recurrent in multiple inter-ITs. So problem like image processing, let's say software, let's say SLAM or path planning, things that are usually that have been a part of the problem statements in multiple inter-IT. We can have topics like these. The structure will be like something like a workshop, which is let's say a 2-hour workshop a week, followed for 4 or 6 weeks. And depending on the participation, we can have, let's say if there are a particular time, if you want to expand it to a 4-hour workshop together and then stretch it, something like that. That will be the structure. And what will people from pseudo inter-IT team learn? Again, things that they feel that the team presently collectively is missing out on, they can work on that area.
My main question was who will be taking
the tech schools, right? So basically, let's say we have identified a topic. One thing we can do easily is that we can club it with a workshop by tech team. Let's say we are having a workshop on path planning. They can easily talk to people in tech teams who have expertise in path planning. We can let them know in advance we are having something like this, and they can be taking the sessions. Other than that, we have seniors in the pseudo inter-IT team. These guys can also take these particular workshops.
So who is the target audience for this pseudo inter-IT team?
So for more than above.
One thing is not clear to me. So you want to decrease the number of boot camps, if I'm not wrong, the topics that are covered in the...
No. So basically the structure was every topic we had 3-hour session. What I'm trying to have is for every topic there will be a detailed workshop. So right now we were expecting people to show up for all the boot camps and get an exposure of what kind of topics exist. Instead of that, we are expecting them to attend 1 or 2 of the sessions and be good in these topics.
But because of having this kind of bootcamp structure which we had this year, there were a lot of freshmen who actually attended and got to know about a lot of things. Is scrapping this a good idea? Well, then you are not introducing them to what kind of activities which are necessary to maybe prep for interactive.
Sorry, can you reiterate the purpose of what you mentioned, the purpose that will die down if we have the text tools?
This is the
right-
last question.
So right now, because we had a diverse set of boot camps and all 2-hour, 3-hour sessions, there were a lot of freshmen who attended these and got to know about the what kind of prep they need to do to get to the interactive. So not having those, wouldn't it hamper, as in them knowing about the interactive happening at all in the first place?
Again, I feel there is no particular restriction of not having freshies in this particular tech school, but I still prefer having sophomores and above, because for freshmen we have already events lined up till October mid and in a lot of cases till October end. And if you see the scene of this year's inter-IT, there were very less freshmen who applied. There were very less freshmen who knew enough stuff that could get them into the contingent. So even if we have that, it will be a kind of session in which they will go and attend and they won't be able to make use of it. So I'm not sure if that would be a very positive thing for them.
So we'll move on to the next topic of the topic debate. It is on community development. Should we introspect and take a step back? So there are 3 subparts. First, the so-called community development has been a matter of discussion over the previous years. It's a general belief that students, especially first years, lack enthusiasm, and that's the reason for the lack of community among the majority of technical clubs. Second part, the question that then arises is that there's a fundamental error in the current work structure of the clubs. Are the club members themselves knowledgeable enough and hold enough credentials to instill the same rigor among students? Should technical clubs shift their culture, or rather bring back the culture from management clubs to core tech oriented nature? Third, if yes, can taking a step back, participating in competitions, training club members be the first priority rather than conducting repetitive events? Over to the candidate.
So I guess I will try to answer this thing as a whole with one of our manifesto points, which is again what we discussed about the convener training part. Something that is mentioned here, training club members be first priority, and something that is also mentioned somewhere in the middle, are club members themselves knowledgeable enough and hold enough credentials to instill the same rigor among students. So that is something that we can solve by having something like a convener training, which we just discussed. Again, discussing about if we should be a management club or a core tech oriented nature, I think we should strike a particular balance. We should not leave the part where we have events. We should not be a thing where we just are working on projects. We should have events, because the purpose of hobby clubs are not really to work on hardcore tech. It is to expose people, give the people an exposure of the things they can do. We have enough opportunities for people who want to do who want to get above a particular level of tech. And then again, participation in competitions, this is something we are definitely promoting. In fact, this year also, few clubs sent their convener teams and other people also in multiple competitions, and they had a very good result. That is one way we are looking forward to build a community around clubs. Is there any other particular question I should answer?
So, I mean, you mentioned that we should strike a balance between having a management event part to it and a competition part to it. My question is that when you want to keep an event, suppose when you want to keep an event, when the club wants to keep an event, right? Shouldn't the one who is teaching to the students, giving the knowledge to the students, like the first years, okay, the one who is organizing the event, shouldn't that person have enough knowledge on that particular topic in order to reciprocate that to the first year students or the second year students?
He definitely should have the knowledge.
Yes. And do you think that is there in the structure which is currently there? And by participating, and don't you think by participating in various competitions, will this help in developing, these skills among the conveners in a better manner, so that they are able to reciprocate knowledge in a better manner to the students? So going toward the core side, isn't that better?
Again, I don't think so we should entirely fix to the core side, if that is the question. You said the people who are teaching, who are taking the sessions, they should have enough knowledge, which is definitely true. And the way we can ensure that, so right now, even whenever we have an event, we definitely make sure that the people who are taking that particular event have particular knowledge about that that thing. They have a proper mock-up practice session or whatever. They do background check. They get it through with multiple people. And just to improve that, that is the again point of convener training, where we are training them about particular things, about the events they are going to have in the next year. About participating in competitions, as I said, we definitely should have this year 2 clubs tried it. Next year we will try to have more clubs participating in competitions, because that is a very good way of developing communities. But again, I don't think so. We should just participate in competitions and not have events.
So you're reiterating a lot on convener training, right?
Right.
I have some questions regarding that. So you mentioned that, so for example of aero modeling club, yes, their convener training cannot happen in August or these months. Then mostly the convener training should happen in summer itself.
Summers and April.
Yes, the
Right.
question is, it doesn't happen. It doesn't
Okay.
happen because people are not here, because they are not given room retentions for the purpose of convener training. And the people who just managed to get the ITSP room retention, only they are able to get the training properly, while others are not able to get the training. So the whole purpose of giving the convener training and targeting towards the competition gets diminished, because people are not present in the institute. And I think you got that point wrong, where you said that conveners are being trained in summers for all the hardware clubs. That is not true. Currently, the clubs are facing a lot of problem in this matter, because people are not there in the summer. How do you plan to tackle this problem? And I think it's a big issue to be.
Right, definitely. But the thing with that is we have enough times in other part of the year where we can have at least a major chunk of the convener training we are talking about. Even if, and that is something, so let's say this year also a lot of aero conveners were able to stay. There were some people who were definitely not.
Factual correction, they were not
This year.
Yes, they were not able to. Only 2 people out of the
Yeah,
11-member team actually learned.
Right, so let's say even if that is the case, let's say most of the people are not able to stay during the summers, we have time during let's say the week after NSIMS, the first week of April when they are appointed. And again, let's say starting whenever the semester starts, these are the periods where we can target to have sessions like these. And that is something very specific for aero modeling, I guess. For rest of the clubs, it is very feasible to have events, to have trainings in April, or let's say if there's anything involving online training, that is something easily that can happen during the summer time.
So this conventional training session for clubs like Kritika and aero modeling already happens. So already exists,
Right.
and the ex-members and the current managers take care. New do you plan to do in these training sessions? Since you yourself mentioned that they already exist, and I was not sure. It was not clear what new you are doing there. Also, regarding the core belief of your agenda, isn't it better to leave these things to the club so that they are more independent and not depend on your manifesto agenda?
So this is the last question. Please, please.
Okay, the first part, which is, you said that 2 clubs already have it. In fact, 3 clubs already have it, which is WNCC, aero modeling and Kritika. So when I talk to the managers, they have some aspects that they already have, and there are few more aspects that they said they will cover if they have something like this. And there are other clubs like ERC, there is no formal structure for ERC right now. For energy, there is nothing. For biotech, there is nothing. So the basic idea is to promoting it within the clubs. It again depends on the manager if they want to have something like this. The whole thing revolves around the concept that we should promote it within the clubs, because the clubs which have been doing it, they have been getting very good results in terms of what they are trying to achieve. That is the first question. Okay, so what else am I missing?
What is that you are planning to do there? That was my question. Not you just said that this already exists. Okay.
So the rest of the council, the rest of the clubs do not have something like this.
So you're planning to do this for the other clubs.
Yes, definitely. That's what I said. ERC, biotech, energy, clubs like that, they don't presently have a formal structure for any of the convener training. The second question was, why shouldn't I keep it independent from my thing? So this is not something I will enforce. This will be very, very strict on the people in the council. This is something that will be promoted. That this is something that they will be helped with whenever they need any help in this particular area.
So that brings us to the end of the topic debate. We will now move on to the background check. There are 2 questions. I'll start with the first one. So, several of your initiatives as Institute Electronics and Robotics Secretary were started but got over almost as soon as they were started. For example, VisionX group was last active on 15th October 2019. The group has less than 15 posts, and the promised ERC bi-weekly newsletter was first published on 26 July 2019 and last published on 14 August 2019, which means it has 2 editions only, and that too with very careless formatting. Do explain why these managerial lapses occurred.
So starting with VisionX, so the idea of the whole thing was, whenever it was started in the month of October, what was planned was we had a couple of people who were managing the whole structure of the workshops we wanted to have. They planned the entire series of workshops, but the problem is when we started in the month of October, it was almost too late for having something like that because the exams were approaching, were very near. We initially tried to have it in the month of July, but because of the predefined events we already have, like Accelerate, Arduino and LF, which already occupied most of the timeline, we were not able to have something like this that time. So that is the exact reason why we are having something like this starting from the month of March, where we have a 4-month timeline, where we have dedicated, defined assignments, topics, lectures, timing, everything that is going to be rolled out in the month of March. Second part of newsletter was, so what we are trying to experiment with the newsletter is the structuring and the formatting. What kind of news do we want? What kind of formats do we want? And that is why we have three particular sessions, not 2. We have 3 editions of the newsletter, and in every edition, if you have seen, there are different sections that are being added. There's a very different design that is being added in every different section. So we are trying to make the model sustainable so that whoever is making the newsletter, it does not really consume a lot of time for the person who is developing the newsletter. And with every newsletter, we are taking feedback from people who are reading it, so that we know what kind of sections do we want. That is why if you've seen sections like Tech Startup of the Week, that is the sections we are adding continuously in the newer editions. And again for this, for the February edition or whatever edition is going to come in the coming month, you will see definitely more sections. So the aim is to make a sustainable model by the end of the tenure that can be replicated easily in the next tenure. It was not to have something very concrete from the starting. We wanted to experiment with the structure, with the design and everything.
So the next question is, because you have a similar point in your current manifesto, as a candidate for the Institute of Electronics and Robotics Secretary, you had promised to conduct lab visits, industry visits, etc. These promises were not fulfilled. Why do you think?
So if you see the first point in the manifesto of the Institute Secretary, we have this thing called the ERC weekend, which is something that is scheduled around the 13th and 14th of March, combined with the thing inside the box GC. And the thing with that is, to cover up the entire weekend, we have events like, we have couple of lab visits, and for that we have already been to places like Vicon Lab in the Institute, and we have already a list of events we are planning to go. Then talking about industry visits, we this year also tried to have industry visits for people during ITSP, but the reason that we could not get, we started the contacting a little late, we could not get enough responses on time. We did get some responses, but the timeline of the industries did not meet well with the timeline of ITSP. So if we just try to push it a little ahead, which is like in the month of April, I feel we can easily get responses this time.
So that brings us to an end of the background check. We would now like to move on to the fifth part, which is a Q&A session. I would like to invite Insight to ask 2 questions.
To the first questioning, there have been regular complaints from tech teams regarding space crunch and safety, and new tech teams are coming up or are in process of formation. What is your plan to ensure that these issues get resolved in your tenure?
Okay, so basically right now 3 tech teams do not have a dedicated space, and during the groundwork when I was discussing the issue with the tech team leaders, one thing that came up when I was discussing if there's something I can particularly do about this issue, one thing that came up was this: let's say if I approach the authority who is responsible for taking care of this, and the other scenario where the faculty advisor of each tech team approaches that faculty advisor would obviously have more a better chance of convincing the authorities of getting the space, which is historically something that has been happening. I will definitely try to push it from my side, taking regular follow-ups if there is something I can do. But through all the groundwork, this is something I realized that it is better if the faculty advisor of a particular tech team take care of this entire issue.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The second question is, you have proposed Pan IIT competitions in coding and cyber security in your manifesto. Why can't the competition can be integrated into the entire IIT technique? And have you discussed this with other IIT Tech Council?
Okay, so basically the thing with that, with these events is, the reason I wanted to have some events like these is with inter-IT, we can have only events in which we want people to meet somewhere and work on the problem statements. In events like competitive coding and cyber security, there is no definite requirement of people meeting at one place. This is something we can definitely try to push in the inter-IT board meet to get added in the curriculum. We have to take care about the limitation that it has, which it has if you consider the inter-IT scoring system. The second part was, have I talked to different IITs? I've talked to 3 IITs. One of them being very, very strong in the coding culture, and that is one of the first reasons I wanted to have something like this, so that IITs which have a better culture of let's say competitive coding and cyber security can help other IITs getting to a similar position.
Yeah, thank you.
So now we'll move on to the audience questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? You can come next.
I want to ask you, you can initiate a centralized book lending system for books from all technical clubs. So how would it will enforce?
Okay, so basically right now we have books from the Maths and Physics Club that they have gathered over years, and what we're planning to have is a library kind of setting in the Tinkerers Lab, in which the previous initiative of the Tinkerers Lab will be used, and a similar RFID system will be followed for issuing of the books. So, and again, we are about the technical clubs, we are planning to add books from all the other clubs also.
So who will take a record of this?
Who will maintain the inventory list? Something like that. Something that happens in the library. Whenever something is issued, it will be. So let's say if there's a barcode, you scan it. That it will be automatically uploaded on the website that this person has issued this book from this period and he's supposed to return it on this date.
Thank you. Can we have the next question, please?
So when there was a question on inventory management, you stated that there was a project which was completed and later on other people joined and it was continued as a TLDIY. May I know which project was that?
So basically the biometrics project, in which basically you put the system inside a socket, and whenever you have the biometric matching, there will be a power flow, and then only you can use the machine.
But I was following that project, and that project was done by 2 of the students.
Right.
And later on it was continued by those 2, and still till now it is not in place, like it's not being enforced, it's not being used.
Okay.
So, and coming to the difficulty level, that project was not so difficult to build up, but with this inventory management, there's a lot of problem with database management and other technical things, that it's multidisciplinary, in the sense that we should, it involves lots of coding, and also we should be tagging each of the material. So may I know
so
how would you?
I will disagree on the part about the difficulty, because the inventory management system, right now we have a lot of open source inventory management system that can be directly deployed, and if we want to have, we can definitely have something which I mentioned about the TLY projects being floated in a similar area. In the worst case possible, we definitely have open source inventory management system that can be accommodated according to our needs.
My question would be that even we had this fingerprint sensor which we were talking about, that is still not in place because of some issues. Like, how will you enforce that the project which you build will be on place?
So basically, if I have a plan for, let's say, changing X, Y, Z, and if this project is particularly helping for that, so that is, I guess, So right now there was no particular plan for this project, like how will this be used. This was one of the ideas that was just getting implemented. But right now, if you have a particular use case for this project that we have to use it in a particular application, it will have a better chance of getting deployed as a final product.